We are one step closer from the Super Bowl this season as we're entering another week of 4th and 4, and it is championship week in the NFL. NFC and AFC championships are on docket later today as we're going to see the San Francisco 49ers traveling over to Philadelphia, as well as the Cincinnati Bengals heading over to the loud house that is in Kansas City. Zach Conlon here sitting in and hosting duties. We've got plenty to break down and recap from this past week, as I'm going to bring in my other co-hosts. We're one short this week. No Kelsey. He is dealing with some illness, but we will see him back for the Super Bowl edition of this show, and we're wishing him the best as we do bring in DJ and, of course, Jim Mernier into the studio. Gentlemen, welcome aboard. It is championship weekend, as I have said. The cards are in front of us for whatever scenario is going to be coming out in 2 weeks for the Super Bowl. How are we all feeling?
Excited, concerned, curious, worrisome, can't wait.
Narratives, irrelevant, GOAT-ish status. There's a couple things happening this weekend. And players calling out certain players in a rivalry in Kansas City, which you shouldn't do. And does Jalen Hurts get Eagles over the hump? It's what we expect. The 4 teams we expect to be here, well, they're here. So,
hey, at least I think a lot of people assume that these would be very possibly the options that would be in the championship scenarios. Although I'll be honest with you, the Bengals, I think that's maybe one that some people are uncertain because you got the big 3 in the AFC with the Bills there. But I'll be frank. I guess we can kick these things off talking recaps of last week. Haven't really gotten to talk about this as we go into quarter one storylines, of course. Buffalo, another year, another disappointment. 3 straight seasons, either finishing just short, all different outcomes. This time felt different, though. It wasn't a close, we're inches away from getting to where we need to go. This time it was a thorough beatdown in their own home stadium out there for Highmark out there in Western New York. Where do you go with Buffalo this offseason? I've seen some people calling for a complete retool, some people calling this an overrated roster. I don't think that's the case, though. I'll go with DJ. DJ, what are you thinking with Buffalo? Where's Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane go with this roster?
There's not a whole lot they can do when you look at how much money they have already invested in players from Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. Like, you can't get rid of any of those guys. You're not going to upgrade any of those, Von Miller, et cetera. You're going to lose a few pieces, but I think you're not stuck. But I think this year you still won, 12, 13 games. Like, it's not like you're terrible. You ran into the second best team in the AFC with arguably a top 2 quarterback. I mean, it's bound to happen. You beat Kansas City in the regular season as well, too. So it's not like you're far off. You're right there. They had a rough year as far as injuries go. Plus, like, Josh Allen was banged up. Brian Daboll's clearly a genius. We saw what happened as soon as he left with Josh Allen and what Daniel Jones became. So they got to find a way to split the gap of this year and the Brian Daboll years. And between the DeMar Hamlin situation, that Snowgate situation where they had to relocate a home game to Detroit, which obviously isn't that far, but it's another nuisance. Mm-hmm. There was of course, the shooting incident before the season. Like, Buffalo's had a rough last 12 months altogether. So they got some work to do. You don't blow it up, obviously. I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, unless you're going to get lucky and straight Stephon Diggs or Justin Jefferson on a rookie deal or something, like, you're going to get another lucky trade like that. But at this point, I think you just have to look to retool through the draft, plug in a few pieces and get everybody healthy and just kind of work on it coaching wise too. Cause there's only so much you can do. It's like the Colts and the Patriots of the 2000s. You lost to the Patriots for the second year in a row in the playoffs and they were both butt whoopings. Well, you couldn't do a whole lot to really change it. You had Peyton Manning in squad. Like, you just have to come back and basically give it another shot, maybe tweak a few things, but you can only make gold so gold, I guess, if that makes sense. Right. Like, it's not like you can polish the gold that much more. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think you can only overcorrect this. You can only overcorrect it at this point. You just have to stay healthy and make some coaching adjustments, but you don't fire Sean McDermott. Maybe offensive coordinator you look, but I don't think you fire there either because they were still explosive. It's just, I don't know. It was just tough. I feel like it was just, you lost to a really, really good team. It happens.
Yes, it does. I mean, Jim, obviously you saw what Buffalo's got. I mean, I'm with DJ in a lot of respects. There's a lot of these pieces here. They have a borderline championship caliber team. It just feels like certain things when they get into a scenario, much like how he compared it to the Colts of the 2000s, things just don't break their way these last 3 years.
Well, I'm going to have a different comparison. I'm comparing them to the New York Jets in the 2010s. Like they won the division on the down years of the Patriots and win the division, but they couldn't capitalize on having, that home game and winning. They have the squad, they have the team. But what DJ mentioned, sometimes good teams run into even better teams, and the AFC is freaking loaded. We saw that this year in the postseason, and it's going to be like that for the next 10 years with all the quarterbacks in the AFC. For Buffalo fans, like I've seen Twitter and I've actually listened to podcasts for NFL, and Buffalo fans literally think they are cursed. Like this is they were Vegas favorites to get to the Super Bowl this year. And the situations that like Buffalo's just had bad luck all throughout the year. But also we have to look at Joe Burrow on the other end of the spectrum. He played literally his best game of the year in a blizzard mostly. And give credit to the Bengals fans. There are a lot of Bengals fans there in that stadium. You heard them very clearly. But it seems like, again, DJ does a good comparison with the Colts and the Patriots. It just, the better quarterback is with the team that won. And Brady, when it was Brady versus Manning, Brady always got the edge because he had a better overall team, even though both offenses were just toe-to-toe, equal caliber. Brady always got most of the playoff wins, and Peyton got all the regular season wins. And I think that was like that this year. I think that game never mind. That game was canceled. But even that game, we even saw it in that first couple of possessions, Cincinnati was a better team. That game, I think, would have been the same as this game. But yeah, I don't feel bad for the Bills. It's just, they think they're cursed, and it's just the question is their window getting smaller now? Like, the Patriots are out. Like, the Patriots are 5 years away, maybe even 10 years away of actually competing to win that division, even though they almost made the playoffs, had no business being there. The Dolphins are literally a quarterback away, and they're legit contenders in that division. And the Dolphins should have beaten the Bills in the wild card round with a third-string quarterback. So Bills had a lot of questions entering that game. And Cincinnati, who, again, struggled against a backup at home against Baltimore, a team that knows Cincinnati like the back of its hand. But Burrow went on the road. I think the pressure was more on Buffalo because they were the favorites to go to the Super Bowl. And Burrow just did that little spin throw he did in warm-ups, and it was game over. And that's why we get they go to the AFC Championship. But I think the window for the Bills, my opinion, 3 years max. If they can't do it in the next 3 years, they're going to have to blow up that roster, because I think they're not salary cap issue this offseason. I think next year, when Allen's contract comes up, Diggs' contract comes, there's a couple contracts coming up, I think after next season, that will be the bend or bust or win it all. So they're going to have to make decisions. It's like the Rams right now. The Rams won their Super Bowl, and they're going to be a few years before they can get back into the fold as contenders too.
Right. Well, I'll be honest with you. My more pressing matter, and you kind of led into a comparison. I was going to talk about the Cowboys a little bit, because in the NFC side of things, that's another squad that similar deal. Now, credit, they did get to their divisional round this year, but it's felt like an underperforming, underachieving. And I was going to ask, which would you rather be in right now? Would you rather be the Dallas Cowboys, or would you rather be the Buffalo Bills in terms of what's coming up? Personally, I'd rather be Buffalo. Dallas has a few decisions to make. So that was what I was going to say. I guess I'll preface this and I'll throw this debate in right now, because it's kind of feels like a good tie-in, Jim. You kind of just tied into like future. We talk about, durations of the core that these teams have, the short and the long term. They're, the 3 years, the 3-year, 5-year plans. I'd rather be Buffalo in most teams' cases, because I think at least a lot of their stars are locked down, and they have young talents that are locked down in rookie deals still in the next 3 seasons.
I know. I'd rather be Dallas.
Dallas. Okay.
Here's the reason why. Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Like, that's all in the AFC. Who's in the NFC?
You have Jalen Hurts in your division.
Jalen Hurts.
But you just got Hurts. Purdy, Geno
Purdy.
Smith,
Yeah,
Brady,
but
Rodgers, but they're aging. Like you look at the AFC, you have a core quarterback group with those 5 teams that are going to be in the mix as long as they're healthy and their team's there. It's the AFC is going to be throwback from the 1990s NBA Western Conference, where all 8 teams in the West could win it because that's how tough that conference is. The AFC has quarterbacks that are going to be there. Now the Cowboys, I'd rather be in their shoes, but you got Jalen Hurts in your division. So that's going to be tough. And also, Giants could be a quarterback away of actually being a contender. Right now, they had the carbon copy of Blake Bortles at quarterback and Daniel Jones. And the Washington Commanders / whoever, what name they want to be next year, I think they may have found their quarterback. I think Sam Howell may be the guy they're going to go with because he looked good in the last game of the season. So, yes, I'd rather be the Cowboys because I look at the AFC. You got, of course, the Patriots are the Patriots. They can be crap, but they're most likely going to be that 7-8 team in the AFC that's going to be a pain. The Dolphins are a quarterback away, and the Jets are a quarterback away. The Jets have a pretty dang good team. If Wilson was Trevor Lawrence, the Jets would be in the playoffs. Just saying, it's the AFC East is tougher than NFC East right now, but it's the NFC East it's more top heavy at the moment. But if I was Bills or Cowboys, I'll say the Cowboys because of the division. Now, the salary cap part of it, I have to stick with the Bills because I think the Cowboys are in trouble this offseason period. They got to make some big decisions this offseason.
I mean, your first thing is, what do you do with Zeke? He still has a ton of money on his deal.
Trade him.
And I mean, if you can trade him for a decent value or just beans, But I almost wonder if that's not going to be friendly. They'll still have to pay a good thing up front to do that trade.
Mm-hmm. I think DJ may agree with this. I think they overreacted and overpaid for Dak. Dak had that great 5 weeks and he got hurt, and then they gave him all of his money, and then he just reinverted back to before that 5-week span of Dak from 2 years ago.
Yeah, what do you think, DJ? That's I mean, because this is obviously for Dallas's sake, that ties into a lot of what they want to do in the next few seasons. I mean, besides Mike McCarthy being there, they have a lot invested defensively. There's a lot of star talent on that roster for not getting to a conference championship.
This is kind of part of the reason why I think I'd still go with Buffalo. Everything Jim said was correct. The AFC is way more loaded. It is a dogfight, but you have one of those. You have a top 5 quarterback. You have a top 5 receiver. You have a top 8-ish roster in the league. With Dallas, you have a top 8 roster overall, but your quarterback's in that 10 to 15 area too, depending on the year. Like 2 years last year, I think it was when he played the full year. You'd say he was top 10. He had a fantastic season, beating up on the NFC East. Literally just beating up on the NFC East when it was bad. This year, we saw he was very Andy Dalton-esque this year. It felt like when everything was clicking, the run game was rolling, the defense was getting takeaways, he was solid. He would even put up some big numbers. But then there would be that we saw in the playoff game, we saw it in that last game against Washington. He's really good. He's like a fringe top 10-ish quarterback. I just think he doesn't give you that it factor, that him factor, as the kids say, like what a Josh Allen gives you, where even though Josh Allen's going to poop the bed sometimes, we saw what he did in the playoffs last year. We saw what he did in a few games this year where he can, for lack of a better terms, go alien and can save you regardless. Where Dak, we haven't really seen that consistently. In fact, it kind of pisses us off how little he uses his legs, which is such a good asset that we almost have to beg him to run.
That has disappeared in last few years.
Now
that could just
shattering your ankle will do that.
Well, yes, still. And I was just about to get that. That could be a mental thing right there. The comparison though, like you talk turnovers, picks, and things of the like. This year, that's crazy. That comparison, Allen and Prescott, same deal. Those are things that I think hindered. It wasn't as prevalent. It was definitely prevalent for Dak in the divisional round. That is to be said. Josh Allen, that was more. They just couldn't get anything done. I actually have to give props to the Bengals defense in particular. That was one of their best performances all season, holding the Bills. Second scoring offense, by the way, in the NFL, and that's within like a fractions of some points from the Chiefs. They held them at 10 points in their own home turf in weather conditions that the Bills are very accustomed to, and made them just look like they weren't deserving to be there whatsoever. So was a very fascinating game.
One
that
small
regard.
edit I think the Bills can make that I didn't think about earlier when we were talking about is I think they need to bring in an offensive line / run game coordinator, just somebody that focuses on just running the coaching halfback dive, coaching trap, coaching power that sort of thing, getting the offensive line and running backs coaching. So it's not Josh Allen run around and be Superman, so they can actually just turn around. We saw the Bengals handed to Joe Mixon 25 times for 100 yards and a touchdown. Every time they hand him the ball, it felt like it was 4 yards a pop at minimum. He was punching it right through, like he was back at Oklahoma, punching through the hole. So I would probably honestly think they should try and bring in somebody like that, like a Kevin Maguire, like a true offensive line coordinator type thing that can also be a run game coach, something like that. Just make Josh Allen a little less freaky alien and a little more, have him be a little more like kind of like with Joe Burrow, or even Ben Roethlisberger-ish kind of was back in the day, something like that.
What was unique? What was unique is, even Romo mentioned this during that game, the Bengals played cover 2 the whole entire game. Like they were like, no, they didn't blitz a safety. They played cover 2 the whole time. Their front 4 was getting to Josh Allen. It was making them frustrated because they couldn't run the football. If you can't run the football and you play cover 2, you're not, that defense is, that front 7 is doing something. And Josh Allen cannot figure that cover 2 out. And Romo mentioned, I think in the third quarter, it's like, yeah, Cincinnati's been playing cover 2 the whole day. They're shading Diggs, and they're making other players trying to beat Cincinnati, and the other players couldn't step up. And one other comment, I think it was from Buffalo, some either a radio personality down in Buffalo that I heard on ESPN radio. They said, well, you can't have home field advantage and say that you're a cold weather team when the other team plays in just as cold temperatures as you do. Cincinnati doesn't get lake effect snow like Buffalo does. So they're making excuses that Cincinnati's used to playing the cold, so they didn't have the advantage. Like, they went in your house and owned you in your building, your unique building. Like, no, they're the better team, and they became, I think, the 4th team in NFL history to start a season 0-2 and make it to the AFC Championship game. It's pretty impressive for the Bengals. And again, it's the Bengals. Like 10 years ago, the Bengals play an AFC Championship game. All of us right now would be laughing our butts off. Like, really? The Bengals?
I say 2 years ago.
Exactly. Before Joe Burrow. Like, yeah. Maybe Carson Palmer's Bengals, but they never got out of the wild card round. They always got knocked off by the Steelers.
Even Andy Dalton's Bengals, they got knocked out pretty frequently as well, too. They always got there. I think too, when you have a nickel corner, Mike Hilton, that has 5 pressures and a sack on the game, and you're only rushing 4, like Tony Romo pointed out, he just happens to be the 4th one at any given moment. That's a problem with the offensive line too, is just not picking it up, not slide protecting, and Josh Allen as well too. So I think just tweaking some of those things up, I think will help a lot.
And also, Burrow was not touched. He was sitting in that pocket all day.
Oh yeah,
like that first drive. That first drive, I told us to tell my buddy, is like, if Cincinnati scores here, like touchdown here to get the crowd of the game, they're gonna win the game. And my buddy's like, I'll bet $10. All right, go ahead. And it was just like 3 passes, touchdown. He goes, here's your money.
That brings in the conversation of what happens if Von Miller's in there. I don't know if it changes it to a win, but that impact was felt in the at least post injury towards the end of the year. And some Bengals players were mentioning that Miller would have maybe helped enhance that possibility of getting towards where they needed to go. So,
well, he's a Hall of Famer.
Well,
Miller,
obviously,
that makes everyone else's job easier. Even if he doesn't actually get a sack, him existing just terrorizes a backup filled offensive line. So obviously he would help for sure. But Gregory, you're a 1st-round pick. I didn't see your name once. Like at all for a top 10 pick.
Now that's a gentleman.
There's a lot of guys that they did not make an impact on the game.
It's like we look back at old Baltimore Ravens defenses in the playoffs. Like, the man who was anchor back there was Ray Lewis, and he's the one that called out the plays. And when he was at his peak, and Baltimore was at his peak, and during the postseason, you couldn't pass on Baltimore. Like, Baltimore had one of the worst offenses in the NFL that year. They made it to the Super Bowl because their defense carried them and went on the road and beat Denver, went on the road and beat New England. And I think they went on the road in their wild card game and beat someone in the wild card game. It's because of Ray Lewis. And Von Miller is that type of player. He's the voice back there, experience. The reason why Jacksonville lost to the Kansas City. They didn't have no veteran leadership in the secondary to, contain the weapon that is Travis Kelce. And you look in San Francisco, they have veterans back there that've been there and done that with Bosa. So I think that's missing in Buffalo. They need that a healthy Von Miller. You take a healthy Von Miller over any third-year player because the guy's been there and he's done that in this type of games, especially in Denver. I think he won Super Bowl with the Denver, but I just have a feeling that we're Buffalo. I think just their offense, with them not establishing a running game, they had the worst running offense in the postseason. Out of all the teams that made, they were the worst. I'm like, that's the bread and butter of NFL football. If you can't run the football or stop the football, you're not going to win in the playoffs. I don't care who you are. Even look Tom Brady, the GOAT of all time, the greatest of all time quarterback, didn't advance because they couldn't run the football in Tampa, or they couldn't stop the football. Like Dallas ran all over them. That's the problem with Buffalo. They have all the skills, they have all the positions, but DJ says they need to find like a run coordinator. They have two good running backs. They got James Cook could be a stud in this league, but if you're not handing him the football and making him eat and cook, you're not going to know if he is going to become a stud in the league. But they have questions, and I think their window is dwindling because how deep the AFC is like you miss up in the next couple of years. You're one year you're a 2 seed, and next year you're a 7 seed because you lost 3 games in the regular season because you couldn't run the football. So it's going to be exciting in the AFC over the next couple of years with how deep this thing is. But Buffalo, I feel bad for Buffalo Bills fans because they think they're cursed. And as a person who watches the Patriots, kind of makes me happy, but at the same time, who can't hate Joe Burrow? That guy was just freaking on fire this past weekend.
Well, they are cursed because
kind of just to piggyback off your point really quick too. Look at Kansas City. When they need to run the ball, they can find a way to run the ball.
Yes.
They don't have a committee of running. They just have guys back there. Basically, they have Isaiah Pacheco. Who the heck is that? Nobody knows. Jeremy.
He went off against Jacksonville.
My point exactly as well too. And I think that's where we see the Eric Bieniemy factor, a former running back, college running back too. I think that's a lot of stuff he does behind the scenes is coordinating with running game, that sort of thing too. I think that's the underrated part that he might play in that. So they find a way to run the ball, and they have to. If Buffalo can get some of that, I don't think they have to worry too much. To answer Zach's question of 20 minutes ago before we both went on our very long tirades.
It's all right. Like I said, fascinating question here. I don't want to cut too much more into the quarter number 2, but I have to bring this up because we do have to talk about in the future seasons ahead, as we did get a head coaching hiring this week. Frank Reich is going to be joining up with the Carolina Panthers. Former Indianapolis Colts head coach is going from one team to the next and is actually going home in terms of where he played. He was history piece here. He's the first quarterback in Panthers history to throw a touchdown for the organization when it first started up. And now he gets to be the head coach coming over after a midseason firing over there in Indianapolis. I do want to give DJ, at least I'll give him the chance here to talk about it, because, of course, as we know, DJ is the resident Indianapolis Colts fan himself and one that analyzes the team. Well, here's the thing I do want to ask. I mean, there's been so much talk about post-Reich, in Indianapolis. Frank's now going over to Carolina. There was talk maybe Steve Wilkes retains that job. That is not the case. What do you look at Frank Reich's hiring as for Carolina Panthers?
I will say I feel like Wilkes earned that job. It was a little bit dirty that he didn't get it with everything he did, but it's not like he got it wasn't a bad. It was a really good hire. Frank Reich's a really good coach. I think change of scenery is going to be good for him as well. They're going to give him a chance to find his quarterback there because they need one, whether he wants to roll with Sam Darnold. Maybe he likes Matt Corral. Maybe they try and trade up and grab somebody. Maybe they'll go get Derek Carr or something. I don't know, but I think it's a good fit where I don't think they have a chance to establish something from early on. And they got some pieces there. DJ Moore, Brian Burns, and he's going to put together a pretty good coaching staff. You look at when he came in Indianapolis, he's got 3 guys head coaching jobs between himself, Nick Sirianni, and Matt Eberflus. He's going to put together a good staff. So I think it's a really good move for Carolina, but you still kind of wish Wilkes would have got that job. But if this is your other option, it's a really good option.
Mm-hmm. Well, his first season is ahead of him. He gets to go basically seamlessly into a new role, and he got a little bit of a break out of it too. So you got to feel happy. He also gets some residuals from the Colts. He's really doing pretty good right now, I'd say, in the coaching sphere.
And those temperatures definitely went up a few degrees as well too. No more of those Indianapolis winters. Now he gets to enjoy some Carolina sunshine.
That too, indeed. I think that's a great way of tying things up as we're going to go into quarter number 2. We'll give DJ the mic over here with betting odds presented by Outlier. We have a special one. I'll let him introduce this for this week. Take it away, DJ.
All right, Zach, and I'm glad that you worded it that way because we are going to have a fun one today. So normally what we do is we go over a few games. We each pick a bet from that game that we like, and then we go into a final bet parlay. But we only have 2 games today, so we're going to have a little bit of fun with it today. And what we're going to do is each one of us is going to put together a parlay for each of these championship games as well, too. So we're going to try and win you guys some money, a lot more money than we normally do as well, too. So I will go ahead and go first with mine, and we're going to kick this off with the NFC Championship game. So for the NFC Championship game, the one I'm putting together is Jalen Hurts plus 50 rushing yards. I think he's going to have to run away from Nick Bosa and those guys. So I think he's going to find a way to just scramble and get some first downs and get 50 total rushing yards. Brock Purdy over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I think he'll get you 2. I think in the red zone, the Eagles defense comes crashing down. Play action, there's a Kittle. Play action, Deebo Samuel breaks a tackle, or Christian McCaffrey doing Christian McCaffrey things in the flat. And then piggybacking off that, George Kittle, anytime touchdown. They have a great rapport. The Eagles defense, really good corners, good safeties, outstanding front 4 linebackers, pretty good. But George Kittle, I like that advantage. So those are at plus 676 odds. So feeling pretty good about that one. I do have Kelsey's parlay. So he wasn't able to join us, but he did send me one as well. What he's going with is he's got Philadelphia with the money line, George Kittle anytime touchdown, and Dallas Goedert anytime touchdown. So we had a couple of tight ends making a scene, as well as the Eagles walking away with it. That's plus 1,191 odds. So Kelsey's going for the big bucks in this one. Zach, I'll go to you first. NFC Championship game. How are we going to try and win? How are we going to try and turn a couple dollars into a couple more dollars?
Well, I'm looking at this being a bit more of a high scorer. Yes, we do have arguably the best defense in the NFL, of course, in San Francisco on one side. On the other, the Philadelphia Eagles don't have too shabby of a unit themselves. But I do see this being an offensive fest in terms of the firepower that both these teams present in their specialty players. So give me an over 41.5 odds right there for this game. I also think that George Kittle is going to be picking up 7 receptions on this contest. I think, to me, San Francisco is going to be passing more because you're going to see the Eagles focusing a little bit more on that run game. The Philadelphia Eagles' only real weakness on defense that people point out is sometimes they're leaky in that secondary. So I'm going to go with Kittle. And then also Hurts, 69-plus rushing yards on the day to supplant you, to get you a 3 parlay leg of plus 1,900 odds. Bet 50, you get $1,000 if you land this parlay.
All right,
big money stuff I'm going with right here.
We're gonna have to get Zach a little money.
Money.
Yeah, no more, so I don't get copyright
Yes.
infringement. Jim, I'll let you go ahead and take it away now. How we spending money in the NFC Championship game?
My parlay, you bet $10, so you can win up to $270 if this hits. Taking the under in this game, the weather could be an issue. They said, I saw the weather report and when the kickoff. So for some odd reason, it spells like 2 defenses are going to run this game. Devontae Smith, anytime touchdown, plus 140. Then San Francisco's first drive would be a punt, negative 430. So that's my parlay. A under, anytime touchdown, Devontae Smith, and a San Francisco punt on the first drive.
I like it as well, too. I think it's safe to bet on punting in this game, especially if the weather's iffy. And I always like the Devontae Smith one, since all that attention is going to be looking at A.J. Brown, especially after last week, where everyone was talking about him looking less than enthusiastic on the sideline. God forbid he doesn't smile for a play. But I think they roll coverage of him. Devontae Smith's going to cook. The 49ers corners are good, but Devontae Smith's cooking any of them one-on-one. So I like that one as well. So next we're going to go to the AFC now, which, if weather permits, we are hopefully expecting an absolute shootout. So I'll go first with mine. First one I have is Joe Mixon, anytime touchdown. Last week we saw he got it going on the ground. Plus, I like his ability to catch one in the flats, maybe on like 3rd and goal, and just make a man miss and get in the end zone as well, too, as everyone backs off. We've seen him score 5 touchdowns in a game this year. I think he finds a way into the end zone as well, especially if the Chiefs play a lot of that cover 2 back off style, give him some underneath room. Next, we're going to go with the man we talked a little bit about earlier, Isaiah Pacheco. For the Chiefs, I think in a very similar fashion, he finds a way to cross and get you an anytime touchdown as well, too. Kansas City, especially in the red zone this year, with those big body personnel, I think they find a way to run the ball, especially on a pass, if the Bengals are playing heavy pass defense. The last one's going to catch some strays here, but Joe Burrow, under 277.5 passing yards. We're going to take the under, what I think could be a shootout, because underrated, while Joe Burrow has been excellent in his postseason career, only one game has he gone over 270 yards. And that was against Tennessee when he got sacked 9 times for like 80 yards. So he had so much more field to work with because it's going backwards on first down. So you got 1st and 20, you get 17 passing yards. So a lot easier. So Give me the under for 277 as well. I think he'll be efficient. I think he'll be Joe Cool, Joe Shiesty, Joe Burr, whatever nickname you want to give him. He'll be all that. It just won't be in a yard stockpiling sort of fashion. It'll be efficient. It'll be smooth. It'll be cool. He'll dance in the pocket like Gregory Hines and make people miss, just like we saw last week as well. So I think it's going to be a very good performance from him, just not as much for the yardage. Next, I'll take a look at Kelsey's bet. And for Kelsey's bet, he's going with the Bengals money line. So spoiler to what he's already looking for with the bets as well. Travis Kelce anytime touchdown because it's mandatory. And he's also going with a T. Higgins anytime touchdown. So with his, he's going 3 tight ends and a tight end adjacent in T. Higgins because he's about 20 pounds for being a tight end. This one at plus 950 odds as well too. So looks like him and I are looking in very similar overall odds. So Jim, we'll go back to you on this one. AFC Championship game. Where are we going?
I am taking Cincinnati plus 1.5 in my parlay. Travis Kelce with 2 touchdowns against the Bengals. And KC's first drive will be a touchdown to start the game. $10 can get you up to 400 on that parlay.
All right, so you have them coming out firing often to Travis Kelce, but the Bengals find a way to pull it out late by the sounds of it, or at least within that 1.5 point spread. So I like it as well too. So Zach, do you continue the Travis Kelce train here too, or are we going to take a slight veer?
No, I'm afraid not. But I mean, I would say if you're going to build any other parlay, I would say that's probably a safer bet. This one's a little more all over the place. Oh, it's funny. The one I built I thought would be more risky on BetMGM, but not as much return apparently, according to what Jim got out of his. So you still get a good return, and I think it's possible. But I was fascinated that it didn't hit that. Anyway, here we go. Over 42.5 option for the points spread here, or at least the total points given for Bengals Chiefs. I also have Joe Burrow throwing for 3+ touchdowns in this one as well. And then the one that I thought would boost this one a bit, but didn't do it as much. I was kind of shocked. 60+ receiving yards for Kadarius Toney today is what I've got as the third leg. Gives you a plus 850, at least in terms of the odds. I came out bet 50, get 475. So that's why I was kind of surprised when I heard Jim get bet 10 plus 400. So, hey, surprisingly, this is a little safer, I guess. But, to me, I disagree with BetMGM on that. But, okay, still not too bad return if you get the Kadarius Toney one to land, because I think that's the hardest leg out of this one, is that one in particular.
I like that one as well, too, because I think he is poised to have a really, really good game, especially if the Bengals lock in on Travis Kelce and put Jesse Bates, Logan Wilson, and throw the entire city of Cincinnati at him. That should leave things open for everybody else as well, too. And Kadarius Toney's such a Swiss Army knife, using him out of the backfield, things like that. And Patrick Mahomes, I don't care if he looks good now. I don't care if he has no injury designation. I saw that ankle go in 2 different directions not even a week ago. He's not going to be.
Question marks, man.
I have to imagine he's at least a little bit hobbled, a little bit. Maybe not hobbled, but I expect a more stationary one, which should lead to a Kadarius Toney, and is what my thoughts are too. So because it is still championship weekend and we just all did our own parlays, that doesn't mean we're going to skip out on DJ's best bets. Once again, brought to you by our good friends over at Outlier. Use Outlier.bet /high-low sports. Get yourself a free 7-day trial. Bet smarter, not harder. Follow all the trends, data, everything across multiple sports books as well too, to put together your best parlay, which is what I did here when we used both games to put together a parlay, crossing over both the AFC and the NFC championship game. First one we're looking at, A.J. Brown, anytime touchdown. We talked about how he last week didn't get involved too much. You know darn well Jalen Hurts, one of their best friends. You know that Nick Sirianni, they're going to find a way to get him involved, whether it's a fade, a bomb shot, or they might just hand the ball to him. You never know. He's big enough to run through people. A.J. Brown, anytime touchdown. Piggybacking off of Zach's, I think he might get 60 yards. I think he'll get an anytime touchdown as well too, especially in the red zone. He is their misdirection type weapon. Out of the backfield, reverse, jet pass, jet sweep, anything like that. I look for Kadarius Toney to cross the goal line. Brock Purdy, 225+ passing yards. This was the last one before you started getting into the positives, for like the positive 100. This was like negative 110. So pretty good odds for him to just kind of manage the game, for lack of a better words, as well. So just throw plenty of checkdowns and get some yards after the catch. George Kittle and Deebo Samuel can get this in 2 plays by themselves after the catch. So I feel good with him cracking 225. T. Higgins plus 50 receiving yards. If the Chiefs are smart, they will roll coverage towards Jamar Chase and try and take him out, and they will let T. Higgins try to beat them, which he's capable of. So I'm going to take T. Higgins at 50+ receiving yards. We saw in the Super Bowl and Jalen Ramsey. He did that in a single play while throwing Jalen Ramsey into the ground. PI or not, does not matter. It still happened. Odds on this one are 21.89. So bet $1, get yourself 20. $22 roughly in return. Bet yourself a lot more. Get yourself a nice chunk of change there as well, too. So once again, Outlier.bet /high-low sports. Get yourself a free 7-day trial. See if you can, put together some fun parlays and win yourself some nice chunk of change. But that's going to do it for the second quarter, where we talk about all things betting. Next, we're going to head to the third quarter, where Jim's going to talk about fantasy DFS. So, Jim, go ahead and take it away.
It is the third quarter, and daily football fantasy for the AFC NFC Championship weekend begins now, of course. Last week's team, unfortunately, our wild card team made money. Last week's team did not, because two of the players that we had played only like 2 to 3 snaps the whole entire game, and that was it. So that hurts you. So this week's daily fantasy teams, as we're going to do it, is quarterback, running back, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire for our backfield. So our receivers are Kadarius Toney, Deebo Samuels, and Brandon Ayuk. And our tight end flex would be Travis Kelce and T. Higgins. And our defense is the Cincinnati Bengals for this week. How I did this, it's based off of 60,000 as a normal daily fantasy is, 60,000 salary cap. So our team was 59,700 with $300 remaining. But with this week, it's championship week, and what I usually try to do for daily fantasy for championship week, I go after a elite quarterback and a go-to weapon, or 2 go-to weapons. In this case, Travis Kelce, because he's going to cook no matter if it's the AFC Championship game or week 2 in the preseason. He's going to get the football. He's going to get targeted. And also Mixon, who just basically has had 100-yard carries every single playoff game so far. So to start it off, let's start off with DJ. It's this time of year, you're so limited on roster sizes because you only have 4 teams to pick from. And when you're going for stars and you go for backups to be your, flex, you're looking at backups / second string players on other teams that may not even see the field. So in your case, how will you judge this roster? What will you do on your version of this week's daily fantasy?
Like you said, there's only so much you can do. I mean, you're picking from 4 teams really, and you only have so much money to work with. So I like the Joe Burrow option. I think he's arguably choice 1 or 2. I think him or Patty, you can't really go wrong with. I think Joe's going to throw more. I think he's in a position. The way they play, he's probably going to get you 2 to 3 touchdowns. That seems like a safe bet. Mixon, I know I just had an anytime touchdown for him as well too. His price tag is the only thing that I don't like, because while he can get you 100 and get that tutty, I'm also worried that it took him like 6 weeks between touchdowns before he got this one last week as well too. So just for his price is what concerns me. I don't know what Jared McKinnon or Isaiah Pacheco's price was. Maybe picking them and then somebody over Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who he could get 10 carries and come out of nowhere, or he could just not play. That's the only one that concerns me, but you're limited on who you could take and you're limited on money. So I see where you have to go with that. If I could maybe do Jared McKinnon like Elijah Mitchell. I don't know what their price tags are off the top of my head, but maybe something like that, since Mitchell can be a touchdown thief for McCaffrey maybe. Receivers, I like the receivers. I'm always hesitant to take 2 receivers on the same team, especially going against Darius and Bradbury. But there's, once again, what are you going to put in that place? Tyler Boyd. I mean, maybe if Devontae Smith was a similar price, but like it's tough.
Or Juju. But Juju, you don't know which one you're going to get.
Exactly. Is he going to get you 200 yards and a touchdown, or is he going to get you not even 20 snaps? So overall, I mean, you have to. I feel like we're all in agreement. Travis Kelce is pretty much the guy you have to take a tight end. Maybe you take George Kittle as well too, but Travis Kelce feels like a safe bet. I like the roster overall as well too. I might try and change the running backs, but there's so few options to work with. Yeah. I mean, at this point, you'd be either trying to pull out Nyheim Hines, I guess. Like, he's not even playing this week. Like, you're really digging into the rosters at this point. So overall, I like it. I think Joe Burrow at quarterback's a good pick. Travis Kelce, almost a no-brainer. Receivers, there's a good chance to, like Zach mentioned, they can get leaky in Philadelphia's secondary. They're fantastic, but sometimes just a little bit of drip comes through. And Brandon Ayuk's electric. He's been really underratedly good this year. We all know what Deebo Samuel is. We all know he doesn't even have to get a catch to impact the game. He just has hand the ball to him. He will take a quarterback draw for a touchdown at some point. They will direct snap it to him and he will score. Maybe not this week, but in his career it will happen. So overall, I like the team. I think it's a I think you can win a couple of dollars with this team as well, too, especially if Clyde plays. That's my only concern. Will Clyde actually get any snaps?
Yeah. The turning point is that Kelsey and Kittle are the same amount, but I look at the two players going up against the two teams. No matter who's playing Kansas City, Kelsey always gets his. He always has a touchdown, 2 touchdowns, and he's always 70, 80 yards, whatever. Kittle's had moments this season where he'll have a breakout game, and then he's a no-show for the next 2. And he's played similar defenses. Maybe that's because of quarterback, but Mahomes knows where Kelsey is at all times. Like when there's no one there, Kelsey's there, and he knows he's going to get there. That's why I had Kelsey over Kittle, even though it's still 2 great tight ends.
Right.
If they're the same price, take Kelsey all the way. I was thinking they might have Kittle cheaper just for that reason you mentioned. But if they're the same price, you run away with Kelsey. Like that's a $500 buffer. If any, like you have to get $1,000 cheaper before you think about switching out Kelsey.
Now, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. There's not much to dive in. If anything, I thought there's an interesting scenario I had been reading on where I'm like, maybe this could fit. It's a bit riskier, just because you are relying on Brock Purdy to be your quarterback in this scenario. But this is how I'd read Tool if you wanted to say to me, because I would love to get Christian McCaffrey in there if you could. That's the one I would. I know that he's a little more expensive than Joe Mixon. That's the only problem is you're limited because he's pushing 9,000 plus on FanDuel right now just to get him there. But you replace Burrow with Purdy, who has a potential to me. I still think that this game can lean to where there is chances you can get your points through yardage and maybe a few of those red zone TDs he's really good at getting. To supplement your points, get Christian McCaffrey in, who then could double up, usually one of his better targets in the red zone, also could run it in. Maybe you do something like that. The only problem, Joe Burrow is hard to move on from. You have to convince yourself to do that, and you have to then, basically it's a cost balance analysis. Do you think CMC is going to, along with Purdy being in, will supplant what you do with Joe Burrow being put out? Hard to say, but if you want to take a gamble, that's a scenario I've seen this week that maybe you could try. Not guaranteed it'll do anything. It saves you you save definitely the $900 from switching off Burrow to Purdy, so you can switch Mixon out for say CMC. So you could do it that way if you think about it. But otherwise, I mean, I like this roster. So I couldn't think. I was trying to think of ways maybe to work in like a Devontae Smith, but Smith's value is about the same as AJ Brown's right now. So there's no savings from either one or the other. You're kind of basically picking an if/or for Philadelphia at this point. Beyond that, this is pretty well sound, I would say, in terms of it, just because, you gotta, unless you find a different value elsewhere, San Francisco has all these targets that anyone can contribute during the week, or can get their numbers like Debo, that you might as well stick with it. I like I said, I'm leaning this is an offensive battle in the NFC, so I think that helps out with that. And I have no regrets if you keep Burrow and Mixon as your QB RB options for those number ones. But I mean, otherwise you're just going to be more risky plays. That's it. So this is pretty good. It's well knit for me. I would take it too.
Well, I've seen people use Purdy and go after CMC, and especially in the last round. There's a lot of people just doing that, going Purdy, CMC. And they were in the money line, and the rosters basically were saying yes, they couldn't get Kelsey or Kittle because they spent 9 something on. Well, last week CMC was like 10 grand or like that. So that's 1/6 of your roster.
Well, here is one too that I thought was interesting as well. And again, I'm referencing Athlon Sports. They use these high leverage setups as your kind of like sleeper picks.
Yeah.
One of them said that if you wanted to take a gamble and not even take Kelsey, they say put Hayden Hurst in, which cuts you about, let's see, like $3,000 on your budget. And Hurst had a solid week last week. He's been getting more and more involved as of late in that offense. And then you can maybe supplant that, use that to repurpose, say, in your receiving core. That way you can maybe, if you want to get more of a higher up guy like a AJ Brown or a Smith, you can maybe replace like Ayuk or then Tony if you don't trust either one of those guys. You can have it as that way. Again, though, you're switching the value around, so that's what you got to consider. But
Yeah.
that is available as long as Hurst's production keeps up as it's been during the playoffs so far.
Well, true, but also the inconsistency of Hurts compared to the consistent of Kelsey.
Right, which is what you lose in that floor. You're basically
Exactly.
repurposing it into the receiving core. You're hoping there's a floor there that's as productive, or maybe you can flip around value. But that's why I'm not too much keen on switching things up, because you're kind of just at that point getting into, like, I would say, being extra with yourself. You're second guessing yourself for the sake of second guessing, because that's how it is with daily fantasy. So to me, you might as well just go with this flow and just kind of say, if I'm going to bite my nails, I'll bite my nails, whatever.
True.
No reason to sit on it at that point.
But overall, the last 2 quarters, we were trying to help you, the fans, win some money on championship weekend. Yes, there's only 4 fan bases out there that can, watch their teams stress out. Again, last week, my team fell, which, again, I enjoyed. Hell of a run. But now, if you can't win money, at least enjoy the football games. And in that, we go to Pick'ems with week 4. Well, it's not Kelsey, but with Zach to pick both AFC and NFC championship games.
Yes, it is I this week hosting the fourth quarter here in Kelsey's place, and I am glad to do it. I am doing very well, not only in the regular season, but clearly the postseason has also been my friend. As you can see the rankings on screen, last week, 2 weeks in a row for myself, I have no losses. I have been a Nostradamus of this year's playoffs for running to the Super Bowl. Jim and DJ right behind me on my heels, of course. Actually, all 3 of these guys, 3-1 weeks. The only one I had differently was just a few different choices. That Bengals pick to me is the one I say was the one that helped solidify everything else. But you look at the playoff standings here. Remember, the main race you're looking at is Jim and Kelsey in terms of the punishment at the end of the year. So Jim is currently a game ahead right there. DJ is in the middle in the mix, but again, he's safe from the regular season. So we are good on that point. As we switch back, gentlemen, time for a little bit, like it's a little tougher test now. You're getting the best of the best on either conference, and not as many risks you can take at this point, or at least not many options.
You got 50% chance of getting it right here as well, too. Zach's already clearly claimed the lead unless he tanks it the rest of the way. So, Zach, you win the postseason. But Jim and Kelsey, I mean, one iffy pick here, and you two are in a battle royale. Well, I'm just kind of chilling in the way.
Well, I think if my pick for this week goes in my favor for the first game, it's over. Because I'll have a 2-game lead with 2 remaining.
Interesting. Well, since you put it that way, might as well take a look at what we have for that first game. And Zach, I see something familiar here, and it's that you and I are going in the exact same direction on this one.
Well, yeah. Look, I'll be frank with you. I talked about this in the lead up in our we jump on these shows, we do a little bit of banter beforehand. And I'll be honest, this was the game I had the toughest choice with in terms of going with in terms of picking a favorite. I like Philadelphia, but I'm going to be honest with you, San Francisco, I see that overall roster and it scares me. If you're picking Philly, I get why you pick San Francisco if you're on the other side. It's just I myself for this pick, I think the talent level is just a little bit higher for the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's maybe Brock Purdy proves us wrong again, but I think it's going to come down to the QBs specifically in this battle of wits and in terms of good coaching. So I just have to give it a little to Philly, but hey, Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy could surprise us. And that's also, again, a very talented overall core of guys over in San Francisco. That is a well-rounded team, as Kyle Shanahan likes to put together. I do want to go here. DJ, I'll let you respond after I hear from Jim, because Jim's really the one leaning in on the different side of things. Again, I stress, this is a hard one for me to pick, but I'd love to hear why at least you think Brock Purdy, the Mr. Irrelevant, the man who has been the talk of the town since he's come in for Jimmy G, will take them to a Super Bowl bout against whoever the AFC brings with him.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not going to be Brock Purdy that's going to win this game. It's not going to be CMC that's going to win this game. It's going to be Bosa in that defense. Okay. San Francisco's defense, like I said in the beginning of the playoffs, if we did a conversation off air, who do you think would be in the Super Bowl? Or we did it like I think week 17, where I said San Francisco can ride their defense to a championship. They are like the Denver Broncos. 2014 when they won it with Peyton Manning. Is it 15?
Yeah, because it's Cam Newton's MVP here.
Correct.
And I think San Francisco has a better defense. You saw that defense last week just swarm Dak Prescott. Like he couldn't stay healthy. He couldn't get, comfortable. Now they're going to Philly. Yes, it's on the road, but you're playing up against Jalen Hurts, who this is his first time or second time in the playoffs, but at home in a tight game. San Francisco was in this game last season, and they took on a better offense last season, in my opinion. It was LA had a dang good – their quarterback was cooking at the time. San Francisco's been there and done that. I think their experience being in this game outweighs Philly. Philly is having a hell of a year, and I think again this is actually going to be the more entertaining game of the two. I just think San Francisco's defense makes more plays as they've done all year than Philly, and Philly's defense has been more leaky than San Fran. If Purdy's out there being a game manager, let's say 70% completion rate, maybe 200 yards passing and a touchdown, or maybe two. If Purdy gets 2 passing touchdowns, I'm going to say right here, if he gets 2 passing touchdowns in this game, San Francisco wins this game by 2 scores. Because that means Philly is not stopping San Fran. Because that CMC's cooking if that's happening. I've said right before the playoffs, San Francisco is going to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC, and I'm not going to waver from that pick. Even though my AFC pick didn't make it, but yeah, San Francisco. But I think this is going to be a good game, and also we're seeing a young generation of Philly. So Philly fans, they're going to have a few years here with that offense and Hurts. That's come from being disowned by Alabama, going to Oklahoma, then going to Philly and becoming a star in Philly. So Philly's in good shape, but it's going to be an exciting game. And hey, if Philly makes it back to the Super Bowl. You might get fans down in Jacksonville cheering for Philly because of the head coach down here in Jacksonville. But yeah, that's why I have San Fran. I think their defense is good enough to win it. So yeah.
Okay. DJ, anything to add on Philadelphia's chances, or maybe Jim persuaded you to the opposite side at post the fact? You still can't change the pick, of course, but you can always talk.
There's a reason it's a 2.5 point spread. It's a very close game. I'm going to stick with the Eagles. I think the difference for me is going to be Lane Johnson at right tackle and the rest of that offensive line. I think they'll be able to mildly mitigate that San Fran pass rush to where they might have to consider bringing extra rushers, and the corners is where they can get a little bit leaky. And AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are no joke, and they're healthier. It was weird as it sounds with how banged up they've been recently. Their injury report's pretty much clean, where San Francisco, as mandatory, they have a couple guys here and there that will play, but the questionable thing, like in a game this close, the little small things like that, I think make a difference. But if you told me the Niners win, I'm not going to be surprised at all.
Mm-hmm. Totally the Shanahan way to have a few folks straggling over there in the medical bay. Every season, either that or it's defined how the seasons go. That's Kyle Shanahan for you. Mm-hmm. Or at least that's how they built it. I don't know. It's the training staff, okay? Something.
Get you a chance
it's something
to tank
over there in the bay.
Years.
Something over in the bay. I don't know. But it's another year where they're making this a run. Fascinating game, though, seriously, over there in Philadelphia. As we're also going to look at, of course, the other pretty high caliber game that is another rematch from last. It's a rematch that is from last year's AFC Championship. And in the same locale, as we're going to have Kansas City, of course, hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. DJ is the lone man choosing the Chiefs. I thought this one would be evenly split at the very least. Cincinnati, though, predominantly across the board. I'm going to let DJ start here. What's Kansas City going to do this time to get over the Joe Burrow hump and get a win against this squad that Zach Taylor leads?
So I do think Cincinnati's better. Their team is deeper. I think they have more weapons. They're healthier. I know the offensive line's banged up, but Patrick Mahomes, you can't convince me that ankle's 100%. I saw it go in 2 different directions. That thing is still a little banged up. But this also kind of weirdly reminds me of when they played the Bills in the AFC Championship 2 years ago. Patrick Mahomes came off of getting knocked out against the Browns, where he was pretty much unconscious on the field. Somehow played against all odds, where they're like, oh, what's he going to be able to do? The Bills are better. They're coming in. They're swinging. They destroyed, I think it was the Ravens and the Titans coming into that one, I think it was. Point is the Bills were cooking too. They were the better team. And it was a 38-14 walloping where we saw the Chiefs have their way with them. I think this has a very similar chance to be similar. I think Patrick's going to be just fine. I think he's going to make plenty of plays. I think, and on top of that, Cincinnati's mayor just posted a very uncomfortable video basically asking Joe Burrow to take a paternity test to see if he's Patrick Mahomes' daddy. You know darn well Chris Jones is going to see that, and he is going to be living in that backfield after that. They've been joking about the Burrow head thing all week. I think Kansas City, for the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era, they get to go in with a giant chip on their shoulder in a type of way like this, where they're, for lack of a better term, being disrespected and written off. Plus, Andy Reid's going to cook something up as well too. I think they're going to bring a little bit something different. It's going to be a close game, but I think we're going to get Kansas City on their A game. Patrick Mahomes is going to be fantastic. I think Travis Kelce is going to have a game. And for the first time since they've acquired him, Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman are both slated to play at the same time in the same game. Oh, yeah. That is a lot of underrated dynamic ability between those two, because Mecole Hardman might be the fastest guy left in the playoffs. Kadarius Toney as electric as it gets. And then you throw in the Travis Kelce and everything else. So give me the Chiefs. I think it's a close one. I think they kind of right the wrongs of those couple of losses as well too. Last year they were dominating until Patrick Mahomes kind of came undone after halftime. So I think they kind of right that wrong. And Kansas City, I think, will return to the Super Bowl. A close game, but Cincinnati, I think, took one too many steps out of bounds on the way to it. And that's tough because Cincinnati's better. Like, I had them ready to pick until I saw that darn video from the mayor. And I'm using that as the caveat. So another razor close game, but I'll take Patty by a smidge. Stuff
like that, that always seems like superstition to me. I'm talking like New York Giants yacht photo type of levels of stuff. You see things like that. You gotta be careful, man. Cockiness can come and bite you. I swear. That's one that I do worry about when you told me about that. I'm sticking with my pick though. I do feel confident because, as you pointed out, and Jim will add on to this too, as I'll go to him. Cincinnati, that was the best performance they had last week defensively. Which, Jim, I think that in terms of you and I looking at the Bengals is something, if they can keep that same level and get after Mahomes like they did last week and keep receivers at bay, get them frustrated, that's what I believe helps lead this in the way. And plus, T. Higgins is even better than I think he was last season, and Jamar Chase is still at just that high top 5, top 3 level to where it's that much harder this year to keep up with that core of receiving options that you have to be in the secondary.
Yeah, and the two key factors in this game is that right side of Cincinnati's offensive line, which performed well against Buffalo. Actually, you didn't ever thought they were, replacements. And Mahomes' right ankle. Which one will bend? Which one will break? Not saying that Mahomes breaking his ankle, but still. But yeah, a healthy Mahomes and a healthy Burrow is primetime television. That's why it's a 6:30 game, even though it's not technically primetime, but still. But all of us saw Mahomes' injury, and we saw how that offense of Kansas City just died. It couldn't go. It wasn't explosive. They had one late drive in the fourth quarter that really sealed the game against Jacksonville, but they had a hard time putting Jacksonville away in the second half. Jacksonville crawled their way back in the game, and it was like deja vu. Here we go again. Jacksonville down, going to make a historic comeback. But this game, Cincinnati's defense, if it translates like it did last week, they can contain Mahomes. The one thing I noticed last week, how Jacksonville, when they were blitzing Mahomes, he was scorching Jacksonville. When they didn't blitz Mahomes, he was struggling to get the ball to receive because he couldn't force the ball down the field because of his foot. Mm-hmm. You compare the two defenses. Cincinnati's defense is better than Jacksonville's defense. That front seven is better and healthier than Jacksonville's defense, and they also have a better secondary. The question is, I guarantee he's been babying the ankle all week. I guarantee he's getting red, the receivers, the quarterbacks wear the red no contact jerseys in practice. I guarantee he was wearing that, some bubble wrap, and a 10-yard buffer, like they don't even get anywhere near him. We're going to see a lot what Mahomes has in the first drive. And if it's right down the field, touchdown, oh crap, this could be the team. This could be the same thing. But the thing is unlike Buffalo, Kansas City does have a running game. No matter who's back there, what DJ said earlier, they can run the football on who they know how to.
Mm-hmm.
The key factor is again, this is the simplest of all factors in this game. Can they not contain Kelsey? Can they slow him down? Because what we've seen so far in the playoffs and what we've seen over towards the end of the year, you kind of disrupt Kelsey. Kansas City's offense struggles to score. They were in a nail biter against the Texans at the end of the year. They struggled against the Rams later in the year. That's what Cincinnati needs to do. You're not going to stop Kelsey. Kelsey's going to eat, but if you slow him down and let Mahomes trying to get a Juju to beat you or Kadarius Toney trying to beat you, you need that to happen. If those guys are beating you, you're just having a bad day. But you cannot have Kelsey go off. And in my opinion, I think Cincinnati's defense is good enough. I think that front four is going to be hectic in the backfield. And again, I don't trust. I'll pick out of this 10 game was 10 out of 10 times. I would pick them Cincinnati or Kansas City to win 9 out of 10 because Kansas City is a good team. I still have a question mark about Mahomes' ankle. I don't think it's 100%. And Joe Burrow right now is healthy. Even though his offensive line is patchwork right now, he's healthy. And he just went on the road and silenced a very rowdy crowd in Buffalo. I don't think – and he's been to Kansas City before in this
Very
game.
familiar territory.
Came back and silenced that crowd. So the Arrowhead Invitational, as what Nick Wright was saying on Fox, will have the same result as Joe Burrow will go in there and win the AFC Championship and go to Arizona for the Super Bowl. And that's the reason why. And I think it comes down to Mahomes' ankle, Cincinnati's right side offensive line, and if Cincinnati can contain Kelsey. If Kelsey's going off, it has to be a 45-35 type of game. It's going to be a shootout. But if Cincinnati contains Kelsey, I think this is going to be one of those low 1.5 field goal type of games where it's coming down to the end, but it's not going to be high scoring games. You don't have the same game from like last week, Jacksonville and Kansas City. It's going to be coming down to that last possession. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, as you can see, picks are in. No Island pick this week. Part of it's because Kelsey's not here. Just would feel wrong. But also, 2 games left in the season. It's kind of hard to do Islands. Credit, each one of you besides myself have Islands. So congrats. You guys are the 2 Island picks this week. We'll go with that. And, we'll see. I think Jim is right, though. We'll find out who is going to be having to take, of course, we talked about the Wonderlic test. So if San Francisco wins against Philadelphia, Jim basically solidifies that claim, and Kelsey will have to, figure out when he is going to be doing that. So something to look forward to,
because I'll have 2 game lead with 1 game remaining.
Otherwise, you guys will tie going to the Super Bowl, and it'll just come to you two. Will have to pick the different it
might be pick and score and point spread. We got
it won't matter. Both of you will have to choose who's going to be it. We'll have to split it that way.
If it's a tie for the Super Bowl, it has to be who picks the game, right? Maybe it'd be just be forced. It's like you have to pick one team. The other player has to pick the other team. Like you ride and die with Cincinnati or ride and die with. You can't do it.
The only way it wouldn't be that, even though I will go with the you guys have to choose one side or the other, I don't care, is if we were to say, okay, if you pick the same victor, tiebreaker goes to who wins the Pro Bowl game this year. The flag football contest, of course, not the skills challenges. We're talking the ones that you got, Pete Davidson and Snoop Dogg as the captains of these.
Oh, dear God. Yeah, good.
No, we'll stick to the Super Bowl picks if that happens, though. But we'll find out. We might be talking to Kelsey about some planning after this. Otherwise, guys, thanks for another edition. 1 more left in this season until we then, of course, do the post-Super Bowl discussion. But 1 more at least leading in to a game before we head into the offseason. It's been a heck of a year. We're excited for at least a chance away before we get to talk about the big game coming up, at least later on in February. For DJ, for Jim, for Kelsey, who is not here, and we wish him the best, of course. I'm Zach Common saying so long. Catch you next week. Not next week. 2 weeks from now. I'm sorry. 2 weeks from now. I was pointing. That's why. We got 2 weeks from now until we got our Super Bowl edition of 4th and 4. See you on the other side, everyone.